Tell me about the food that you ate.
Well, mainly that when we're up in the hill there, we would get supplies, but they're all GI rationing and in little boxes somewhere in little containers, and sometimes we have some canned stuff, like. But that was very seldom up in the mountain because mostly they were in cardboards and just dry foods or stuff like that to keep us alive and going. We had never had any hot food or anything like that, but whatever they had in there kept us going, and because you really never had a lot of time. I never remember having breakfast or lunch, or you just when you're detained and you're laying around, you got to be very careful what you eat because you have to make sure that's going to last you a while. And so other than that, I weighed 165 pounds when we first started going up that mountain, and I come back at 135 pounds. So I did well. I did very well. I was able to carry all my equipment and everything up in the ridges. Those ridges are very steep, and sometimes we get replacements, And I had one young man. He was from Washington State, and he was a very husky, tall guy, and we were going up the hill, and he couldn't carry all his equipment. So me at 135 pounds, I took a lot of his equipment and mine, and I was able to. I was powerful as a little guy, and I felt good helping our comrades out in any way. And he was a new guy, and I knew what he was going through, and we worked together very nicely.
Can you describe the pressure or the stress that you felt there?
My pressure, you don't feel nothing when you're fighting. It's when you don't feel nothing till you come home. Now, when I come home, like I told you, they threw me in the hospital for 3 weeks. Now, the thing that's so difficult is the fact all my records were burnt. So when I went for disability compensation, I had to prove myself. They never believed what I said. And so I had to go, in order to get my compensation, I am a disabled veteran. How long to go to get my compensation? I had to go through shrinks, that they had to interview me. Well, I've never been to a shrink. A shrink is something I felt, crazy people go to that. But I had to go to them. And I went to each one of them. And the story I told them, and they're all individual, they all come up with the same opinion. And I got a 50% disability for my post-traumatic stress disorder. Then anything I got, my other 50%, I lost all my pigmentation from head to toe. Evidently, when I was up in the jungles, I must have got either whatever was there that started destroying. I didn't know my pigmentation was being destroyed until I was about 35 years old. I started getting spots all around, And so before you know it, my face was blotchy, my body started getting blotchy, and so I had to fight that, and I had a difficult time. I had a difficult time trying to prove everything to them. They would not give me nothing for my malaria, which I was very ill. And I tried to tell them that malaria is something, what you go through, same thing as you go through a shaking move for 3 weeks. So it does something to your inherent, your strength. You're not as strong as you like to be, and they wouldn't go for it. But I did get it in my skin and my post-traumatic stress disorder. I got a disability. So that's.
Was there something special you did for good luck?
For good luck?
Mm-hmm.
In the service, prayed. I just prayed, not only for me, for everybody. I get very emotional right now. I lived through all the, Korea War, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. I lived the life of those memories. I know what they're going through. I shed tears for them. I pray for them. I know what they go through. Nobody knows, but I do, and I live their lives. And I shed tears for those young men that are fighting. They're fighting for our beautiful country that we don't want to lose. Another thing, we lost over 400,000 men in World War II. And when I go to these young students, I tell them that we lost 400 some odd thousand young men, and you know the reason why. The reason for our freedom, our democracy, our life, our freedom of speech, our freedom of religion, our freedom. That's what they fought for. And that's why we had the country we have. And we may be losing it, I don't know. But that's what I talk about. Now I shed tears all the time. All I think about it, I shed tears. Because, and I feel so fortunate I'm alive that I'm able to come and talk with you and talk, and you doing this for me. I want everybody to know about World War II and what we did. We did. You lived a beautiful life after that. So, there is a couple more things I'll talk about when you ask me more questions.
Thank you for your service, Joe. Did you get to go to college on the GI Bill, and what did you
I never
do?
went to college. I after my illness and as ill as I was, I had to make some move. I didn't get no disability until 2000. It took me 10 years because nobody believed me because all my records were lost, They never believed me, whatever I said. I had to fight for everything I did. And I'll tell you another one, that when I went to Japan, I'll tell you a little bit, when you're ready, I'll tell you about Japan, when you ask me more questions.
Okay. Well, what kind of career did you have after the war?
Well, actually, I was trying to, in high school I took machine shop, and I had 18,000 hours of training in there, and they gave me a letter and everything, but when I got back, I was not thinking about what I did with I didn't forget all about the things I should be going through. I should have gone in the direction of the machine shop. So I did get a job in the machine shop, and I did very well. Then my brother went in business, in the meat business, and I thought maybe, well, if he let me work with him, and learn the trade, but that was a big mistake. I should have stuck with my shit, because that I was good at. So, but then after I stayed with my brother a year or two, I went on my own. I had my own shop. So I had a little shop in an Italian market on 84th and Western, and I did very well. I learned enough about the business and I had a good clientele, and then I got my friend found me a shop in Alhambra, and that was very successful. I was there for 34 years, and did well. I did well in real estate, and I have a beautiful home in Arcadia. Everything I did, I had a successful year, and I had a good, beautiful marriage for 73 years, and I never had an argument with my wife. I just loved her dearly. We just understood each other very nicely, and I have one son. Now he's 72, and now without my wife, I feel lost, but I do have a friend that's sort of watching over me. She's a nurse, and she's a neat gal and been there for me, and I'm not alone. So that's the main thing. So that helps me out, because if I was alone, they're very depressing. And so I have a lot of friends. I'm a Rotarian in Alhambra, and I have a lot of friends there. I have a lot of friends in my church that have been there for me, bringing me food and taking care of me. And I have a lot of lovely people out there that are there for me. And I can't say much. I can say so much for them. And I still go to church, and I've been an usher there for 22 years, and at Holy Angels, and so every Sunday I go there and I greet as many people I know. And I go aisle to aisle to make sure if I see them I'll greet them. So they let me do that because at my age, I guess so they let me. So whatever question, because I want to tell you a little more about Japan.
When did you get married, and how did you meet your wife?
Well, I met her when she was 12 years old, and so I just thought she was beautiful then, and so when I went into service, I didn't see her. I haven't seen her, all these years. So when I went to service, she asked if she can write to me. And I never wrote to her or made contact with her in 9 years or whatever it is. And I says, I'd love it. But she didn't know that I had a picture in my wallet of her all that time, And I knew as she was growing up what she looked like, And so through our letters, we made our commitments to each other and sent each other's I had no pictures to send her, but she sent me a lot of pictures, which were great, and I just love to see that. And so when I got home, I was thrown in the hospital. I thought as soon as I got home, I'd go back to Chicago and see her and then bring her back to California. But then I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, So I sent her money. I says, if you would come out here, and she did, And so it was a quite, I think she didn't know how to act when she saw me, And I says, I don't know whether she likes me. I don't know whether she liked what she saw or anything like that, So, but evidently it worked out beautiful. We had a beautiful marriage. We got married that same year, and we lived with my dad for 4 years and my mom because of my illness, and my mom took care of me, and she knew a lot about malaria and helped me out. And I thought, before we got married, I had a few attacks, and I thought for sure that my wife would think about marrying a young man that's sick. I thought after I got well, I said, I don't know what her attitude would be, whether she wanted to go back to Chicago or not. But she did write a nice letter, one time stating that how she felt and she didn't know what to do, but it all worked out beautifully. 73 years of marriage, and she had the best of everything. My first home was built by the government in Englewood, and so after 4 years, my wife says, I think it's time for us to be on our own, and so we had the one child. So I contacted the VA, and I had an aunt that loaned me the money to buy a lot, and they built this beautiful little home for us in Englewood, and then we moved to Arcadia when my friend found me a place of business in Alhambra, and I was there for 34 years, and so it was a beautiful marriage, and my loss was great. Losing her was a great thing. It hurt me quite a bit. It took me a while to put myself together, but then all my friends come about and help me out. Come over, bring food to me, have dinner with me, and then my Rotary friends were there for me, and all my church people were there, my family, so it worked out really good. So I have her in my home. I built a little area for her, and like her birthday was last Thursday, so I fixed a lot of flowers and stuff around her little. I have her little casket little deal in my home. I feel comfortable. I sit down a lot of times and I talk to her and tell her how much I miss her. And so